This is definitely one of those episodes that holds up better than I remember it.
It has the face of Bo.
They're not stupid, they're just all really, really ignorant because they've spent literally decades in
Some their whole life on that one road that's barely moving.
Yeah, like we can't really speak to their intelligence because they don't know anything else. They don't know any other kind of life except what they're doing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like the idea is that society has gotten so far into this like terrible thing that it's convinced everyone that it's okay.
Helped if the doctor ran into a small group of people that are resisting, like one or two people. Context into how bad the situation is.
Yeah. Because, no matter how bad a situation is, there's always people that are going to...
I personally had a way better experience with it than I expected to. Like, I expected to go into this one and not have much to say about it and be kind of bored. There's a lot of details with it that I really like. Immediately, I find it more interesting the idea of going back to a planet that we've already seen, but seeing like an entirely different facet of it. Like, of course, obviously, the Doctor has an adventure on a planet. There's still an entire other world there that's like where places will look different and people will appear different and culture will be different because it's a planet.
Yeah.
And yet so often we have him go to a world and then have an adventure and then never go back as if that's the only thing we can do with it. And I get it, you want to make the universe seem as big and sprawling as possible, so you want to go to a bunch of different places all the time. Last time we were on New Earth, it was the glossy, very sort of rich, everything is okay side of it. And now it's like just a couple of 1,000 feet below that, it's almost like an entirely different world and there's stuff to explore there. So why not?
That's something you don't really see in a lot of television shows when they go to other planets and stuff. They just usually, there's one area that's basically the whole planet, our planet, and you just go from like one continent and it's like the top part to the bottom part is vastly different.
Yeah, we like to act in like science fiction stuff as if a planet is just one culture when that doesn't make any sense. The conversation where we like find out how long it takes to move along the freeway is a little confusing, I think, based on the way that they talk about it and the fact that they kidnap Martha. It's a specific detail where it's like, or the guy and the girl who kidnapped Martha, they were probably born on the freeway based on how long everyone's been there and how old they seem to be. Clearly, this branch of society is acclimated to the idea of just taking a really long time to get places. The woman, whose name that I forgot to write down, the woman has a line about how, like, it'll be just in time for their boy to start school. Once they get him where they need to go, they're like, she's pregnant right now. And she's like, by the time that we get out of here, he'll be like 4 or 5 or 6. Just in time to start school. Does this sort of branch of society place any value on education? Are they going to put him in school with people who have not been on the freeway their whole lives? Like, how are they going to be acclimated to that? Where are they going to get the money? And that's just a little weird bit. And another weird bit where Brannigan, the cat guy, he calls the old married couple the Vicini sisters. And that's a line that's aged pretty poorly.
Yeah, from what I remember, he was trying to say they were sisters because he was basically homophobic and didn't want to acknowledge that they were a couple.
Yeah, he's an old-fashioned cat, in his words.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's such a weird moment because otherwise this character is likable, and yet here's just this random throwaway joke about how he's passively homophobic. It's even worse because we're way, way far into the future, and he's a freaking cat person. So, like, interspecies, hello, he seems like kind of a major hypocrite.
Yeah.
And it's like, this episode was written by a gay man, so it's really confused. The thing is, I don't think Russell's thinking about it that hard.
Yeah.
I think he thinks it's just a quaint little funny quirk thing. I think even with him being a gay person, I think he writes that line thinking, oh, it's just a goofy little joke. And he doesn't really understand the implications of it, which confuses me.
Yeah, I notice he does that sometimes with like we talked about Torchwood and like Owen, taking the potions and stuff. It's like not really thinking it all the way through, Russell. How do we get to this point? We think it's okay to be in traffic for years to get to a place. Like, how does anything get accomplished?
It doesn't. They're just in a circle, is what we find out. The upper levels got so ridiculously poisoned that they just couldn't let anyone get back up there until things were sorted out. And by the time things were sorted out, everyone who could have let them back up was dead.
So cool, where they're just constantly in traffic and people just keep going in there.
Constantly told that they will get let out eventually. I can't go into exact details because I didn't write all of it down, but I did make a note of how I was like impressed at how well they answered all of the questions that I had going in. Do you remember at the beginning of the episode where they set up the moods?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's like a little patch that you can put on your skin and like feel a certain mood. We don't bring it up for a good chunk of the episode until around the end, where we find out that like the Senate who was trying to fix all this stuff and the ones who were gonna fix the problem eventually, they got the new mood, which was bliss, and it worked too well. It went like the Reavers and Serenity.
Yeah.
Everybody just laid down and died because they no longer have any needs.
Yeah, they were so blissed out that they just kind of sat around until they died. A really dark moment, but it's a really smart writing move to like have that set up. What you think it's building to is that like they were just abandoned by the upper society because they were the dregs or whatever, that dealing with them would be too much of a problem. But no, it turns out people were trying to fix it, but they just died.
Yeah, high, pretty much.
Oh, dude.
Just let themselves die.
It's not like the people who are on the freeway really have any power to get off. The moment they think they're leaving, they're actually being attacked by these crab monsters who are from a classic episode, so that's neat. I kind of go through most of the episode thinking like, okay, how are they gonna justify abandoning all of these people here for 20 plus years? And then you find out, oh, they weren't abandoned. It was all just a big, unfortunate circumstance. So really, it was the only way they could have written it to make it make sense, and I appreciated that.
Not so much makes sense, just not go the evil route, the lazy route. Oh, they just didn't care about.
Or like there's some mastermind who's doing this all for some nefarious purpose.
Although I'm surprised he didn't go for like the master was behind it after all.
That would have been really dumb.
Yes, I know.
Okay, Lucy doesn't have a great memory this episode. Edward, how did you feel about the Doctor and Martha just as characters in this episode? Because I really enjoyed what we did with them, and the fact that they're separated for most of it, so they actually have to like reflect on what their relationship is and why they're together and all the stuff that they don't really discuss when they just run off together.
I don't really have anything to say.
I have plenty. It's a little moment where the Doctor realizes that like barely knows Martha because he was too busy showing off, in his words. And then Martha has a similar moment like later in the episode when she admits that she doesn't know what's going on. She never considered what she was getting into because the Doctor just charmed her so much. And then the moment at the end of the episode where the Doctor keeps trying to deflect about talking about where he comes from and what happened to his people, and Martha just is not having any of it, and she just pulls out a chair and is like, no, we're going to have this discussion. And I think that's a great little moment for her, and it solidifies her as more emotionally mature than he is.
Yeah, I remember that part. Yeah, I like that part. She's just like, you're telling me, right? It's a long story. Oh, no, tell me right now.
Yeah, like no more treating her like she's just a passenger. Like we'll have that moment later. Like right now, it's building to, no, this really has to be a real relationship. This isn't just going to be a one and done thing. Yeah, I like that the final shot of the episode is the Doctor finally opening up to Martha, and as he talks about Gallifrey and the burnt orange sky and all that stuff, we pan up and New York has that orange sky. And so it's like, even though the Doctor has to own up to the Time War and he has to stop running away from the reality of the bad things that he did and all the stuff that went down, things aren't so bad because this episode ends on a real hopeful note. Here's a society that was given a second chance, and it's, I don't know, I think it's a really powerful, beautiful, like, ending for this episode where it's like this entire sort of culture and civilization could have gone the route of Gallifrey where they just ensure their own destruction, but we have such a hopeful ending for them anyway.
Should we talk about the face of Bo?
Oh boy, I might let you go on that first because the face of Bo is just weird to me.
Kind of Captain Jack related.
Yeah, you get to indirectly gush about Jack for a bit.
Not really, because at this point, it's no longer Jack.
Your first instinct is to read into the implications of what that means, right? Like, how did he become a giant head? What are the dangly bits? Like, I imagine for stuff to happen to you to make you into a giant head, you'd have a different attitude, but like, why does he act so different? This is another thing where I don't want to give them too much credit because I don't know if they knew he was Jack now or if that's just Russell throwing in a funny little throwaway gag at the end of the series.
We just don't know, because I've looked that up and there is nothing implying it one way or the other.
That's unfortunate because that's such a weird reveal.
Torchwood had continued instead of taking an unexpected indefinite hiatus. We might have gotten more of an idea of what happened, but with what we got, we just don't know.
So potentially interesting to think of that as Jack in the context of this episode. The Doctor's reaction to him dying is really poignant if you think about it as that's Jack.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the Doctor doesn't realize that, but he's desperate for him to survive because they can both relate to like having lived too long, and the Doctor's trying to stop him from dying in a way that will kind of be reflected with the Master later.
And he does reunite with much younger Jack. He tries to run away with him because his immortality weirds the Doctor out.
Yeah.
Fast forwarding a bit to Utopia, it's like the Doctor just comes out and says, he just looks at Jack, he's just like, he's wrong. He shouldn't be existing like this. Doesn't know how to cope with that. It's kind of like his prejudice against living temporal anomalies.
The Master shows up there, and we foreshadow the Master. Like, the most direct foreshadowing is in this episode. Again, skipping ahead a bit, but once we get to that episode and the Doctor's reaction to the Master dying, where he's like, the Doctor's just, he's so desperate to have anyone
lived for as long as the Doctor has.
Yeah, anyone like him just to be with. The Master and Jack can both kind of be that, but eventually he has to watch the Master die, and in this episode he has to watch Jack die, and he doesn't even realize that that's what's happening. Bo is able to assure him that he's not alone, but does that mean the Master or does that mean Jack? A sort of foil dynamic between the Doctor and Jack and the Master that's really subtle to the point that I don't know if it's on purpose or not.
I'm pretty sure it was unintentional.
It might have been. It's hard to tell with these things. Like both Moffat and Russell T Davies, they do this sometimes. They try to make a connection there when there wasn't really one to begin with. This is a Doctor Who thing, I think.
This big issue that I have with a whole bunch of later work in any big franchise when they try to give an explanation for everything just for a wink at the audience. It's like everything doesn't have to be explained.
Yeah. And it's not even a matter of explaining. It's just like, I'd like to have the confidence to believe that like Jack and the Master show up together in this show and it's not a coincidence. Like, I'd like to believe that we bring Jack into the three-parter where the Master is around because we have interesting things to say about the character we just happen to have who's already immortal. We could get into that more. Maybe I'll pick up on more stuff looking at it through that lens as I watch Utopia, the ones after it. Looking at this episode through that lens and those moments, it's kind of weirdly powerful. Also, I might as well just mention, since I just scrolled past it, some of my favorite tracks from Murray Goulder in this episode. I don't know if the music particularly stood out to either of you, but like the montage of the Doctor going through the people's cars has one of them in it. The Face of Bo's theme in this episode is freaking beautiful, and all the strange creatures pops up again.
It plays at the end when the Doctor is finally opening up to Martha about Gallifrey and what really happened to it. Also played earlier in the episode when, as part of the broadcast, is some way of calming everyone on the freeway.
Oh yeah, the sort of hymn that they sing for each other. What I really like about that, how it reflects on the episode, is this is a really, really good use of setting. And like the song that Edward just brought up in the scene, it's like they have a regularly scheduled sort of thing where they sing this hymn and everyone in every car like collectively joins in. It's almost like the national anthem or like a religious thing for them. And I really like that because it's one of those little details that helps the freeway feel like alive. this isn't just something that we're stopping by for an episode. It's like, this is a real place. Like, I keep using the word culture. It feels like a real culture. Like, it feels lived in. And when you go through each and everyone's cars, like that montage of the doctor dropping down into different people's like places, and you see everyone's got them customized differently.
Like Blade Runner. Well, the original Blade Runner.
You mean the uncut version?
The original movie, not the sequel, 2049, because 2049 dealt with a story that was a bit of a world changer.
It could be so limiting. If you're not thinking about how to make this place feel lived in and interesting, this could be a really visually boring episode. Most of the running time is spent in a bunch of people's cars, like in very, very confined space. So you really have to work with what you've got and make it so that like every car we go into feels like it belongs to the person it belongs to.
Yeah, and they're probably using the same car over and over again to redecorate it, so
yeah, like ingenuity on the part of the set designers or like the prop crew or whoever, like whatever the name is for the people who like design the cars for this episode. I feel like they did a lot with the little, because it's not necessarily an element of the script, right? Like the hymn and the singing is part of a script, so you can tell that they're thinking about it on that level, but just like there's so much done in this episode to really build the world and make it feel like a real place, and I appreciate that. I mentioned the fact that Brannigan is kind of a homophobic weirdo, and that's weird, but the thing is, outside of that line, I really like his character. Really interesting. And all of the side characters in this episode feel like real people. Like the bowler hat guy and the Vissinis themselves and Brannigan's wife and the couple that Martha's stuck with. There's so much going on in this episode, which is like, you know, I feel like this is real. Like maybe that's just why I'm more emotionally engaged in the conflict of the story, because like I want these people to get out. I like all of these people.
Most of the time, like when you have side characters and stuff, they're just kind of there.
Like what we're really good with in Doctor Who is one or two really strong side characters per story, and like this will be a thing in fact in the next episodes we talk about, because in the Daleks in Manhattan two-parter, that's a double length episode. I want to say there's maybe 4 or 5 at most characters who aren't the Doctor and Martha who are like really stand out and memorable. Here it's like I might not remember most of these people like a month or a year from now, but having not watched this episode for a couple of weeks, a lot of them don't have names, but I don't know, they're visually distinct. They've got some nice, memorable dialogue, at least a couple of them. Like, this is a really big cast of people, and with just visuals and a couple of lines for each of them, most of them really memorable and cool, I think. Okay, are the Doctor and the companion going to make it out? And for the most part, I think we can assume that they're going to be okay, usually. Edward might not know this any more than I do, but he watched the episode, so I don't know. Edward, did I miss it? Or is there no reason for the macra, the giant crab things, to be there? Like, that's my biggest weird thing about the episode. It's just like, is it ever explained how these things got here? What are they doing here?
No, there is no reason outside of, well, they probably were, that they were native to the planet originally.
That's weird, I guess. I don't remember us talking about it.
But... like a lazy way to throw in a classic Doctor Who monster that most people don't even remember.
Which, I mean, to be fair, if you're gonna do a gratuitous throwaway thing like that, you might as well. They're not like the Daleks or the Silurians or anything. They don't have, like, a character. They're just big, dumb monsters, so...
They could be replaced with a brand new generic monster and nothing but change. In my opinion, a poor way to handle reintroducing a classic Doctor Who monster. If you're going to reintroduce a classic Doctor Who monster in a new episode, the episode should be written in a way where it couldn't work without them.
In ideal world, yeah, I can see that. But still, it's kind of a nice little... There's those monsters that were from the classic series.
Yeah, I can see it from the perspective of, like, if you're a writer who's like, what am I going to do with these things? Like, what story could I possibly tell that would mandate the giant crabs? If you don't put them in here, who's to say you ever get the chance to use them again? Maybe they're just like, let's not pass up this opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's what happened there. They were just like, okay, we have an opportunity to bring back an old Who monster, and, you know, there's not a lot of reason for them to be here, but, you know, this is probably our only chance.
Plus, you know, Russell's in charge. Who's going to tell him, no, don't put the classic monster in?
Yeah. Don't put the crabs in there.
These episodes were not as good as I remembered.
But yeah, I guess for my final thoughts, Gridlock, I was expecting to have the reaction that both of you did to it. It was just kind of unmemorable and, just passable at best. It, really emotionally affected me on this watch through. So, I don't know. I feel like this is one of the better episodes so far.
My view on these episodes is more of disappointment because there was a time when I loved both of these episodes, and in rewatching them again, it's like I just came to realization that they really aren't that good.
I don't feel like you've gone into necessarily what stood out to you about Gridlock as a negative, or was it just that the positives that I latched on to didn't stand out to you as much?
With Gridlock, it's just a very poor put together episode.
I don't know. I didn't have that. Hopefully, after this discussion, either of you can go back to that episode and maybe see more of what I saw. So, yeah, I guess that's it for now. So, next time we will be gathered for Torchwood. But for now, bye-bye.
Bye.